Hello and welcome. Today we will be walking through the Women's Funding Network's Toolkit, Put the Power in Her Hands. This toolkit lays out a message platform that can help you tell your organization's story in a compelling and meaningful way. We'll walk you through how your organization can develop that story and achieve your ultimate goals, be they awareness, engagement, or fundraising. This toolkit is for people working in reproductive health, rights, and justice, who are trying to find ways to engage a broader community, particularly donors and funders. This toolkit was designed to be adaptable for funds and organizations working in local, national, and global contexts. As we move through the toolkit, you'll find that in the right-hand column, we've included tips and tricks for how to implement many of the suggestions found in this toolkit. Make note of the tips and tricks section as we move through the toolkit. Why is this important? There are certain phrases, metaphors, or stories that we may feel are compelling or useful as people who work in the field. But when we're trying to create broad social change, we can't only use the language that's meaningful to us. We need to bring new people into our cause, and it's very important that we use language informed by research to be effective. For example, a story or concept might work well for a woman in her 40s with teenage children. However, those same messages might not have been as compelling to that same woman when she was only 22, just out of school, and starting her career. This table of contents outlines what we will be covering today. Our work will focus on two primary areas: crafting a message and sharing your story. The first section, crafting a message, will focus on not only what a message is, but what types of messages are most likely to resonate with your target audiences. The second section, Share Your Story, focuses on how messages come together, become a narrative, overcome barriers, and connect people to the solutions you're asking them to be a part of. Lastly, we will review how to communicate the solutions that your organization offers, the impact that your work is making, and finally, the ask. Crafting a message. What is a message and how do we use it? Your message matters. Your message is a way to open the conversation and communicate to those you're trying to reach with what your work is about, what you care about. In the nonprofit world, as opposed to the consumer world, it's always going to be about winning hearts and minds and communicating your mission. We're not simply trying to sell a product or service. We're trying to get people invested in this important work. To be able to do this, you have to be able to follow the head, the heart, and get to the ask. First, the head. This means using common sense and data to make a convincing case. Then, the heart. Telling emotional and compelling stories to capture their attention. Evidence shows us that people make their decisions based on emotions. We certainly use data to inform these decisions, but at the end of the day, we're human and we're compelled by what we care about and by what moves us. Finally, the ask. Whether it's for funding, leadership, or support, don't be afraid to make that ask. One trick to note: when you're developing these messages, be sure to do so in a way that incorporates the vision and mission of your organization. It's important to get all your stakeholders together, your board members, your staff, to help tell a common story. Here we've included a few sample questions to get these conversations going. In addition to the valuable insights you'll glean from your stakeholders, you'll also get their buy-in. Since they participated in the process, your board members, staff, and advocates are more likely to embrace the final messages. How to use messages. Shared values are sometimes expressed differently from culture to culture. For example, in some European cultures, individual expression is highly prized, while in some Asian cultures, values like caring for your family or respecting your elders are culturally stronger. We know from research that there are certain values that are universal across cultures. Caring about education, the next generation, and family are universal values. Use these values as part of your messaging framework, and you'll resonate with almost every potential donor or advocate. Patience is important in messaging, and repeating the same message frequently is critical to ensure saturation. You'll also need to make sure that your messages are consistently communicated across all communications channels, your website, your emails, your social media. Do not be too concerned about repeating your message and boring your audience. Truly effective communicators stay on message and know that most people have to hear something multiple times before they retain it. Perhaps most critically, and something you'll hear repeated throughout this toolkit, always remember a call to action. Don't just say what the problems are. Tell people how you need them to help and what they can do. On the right, please note the do's and don'ts of messaging. Messages do inspire people. They remind them to stay positive and to think about connecting with people emotionally. They invite people in to be inclusive and to signal to others how they can get involved. Messages make a connection. This is the perfect opportunity to relay shared values and gear up for more information later on. Don't try to fit everything into one message. Direct people to your website and provide takeaway material for people to get more information. Messages don't explain process. Again, don't try to fit everything in. Share only what's most important. Messages don't try to take the place of an accurate or full description. They don't convey complex concepts. Keep the messages simple and clear, and don't use jargon. Remember, jargon can take many forms, and it's not only acronyms. Consider sharing your messages with a family member or a friend outside of the field, and ask for feedback and adjust to keep the messages jargon-free. Why use these messages? The messages suggested in this toolkit have come together in part because we know from research that a lot of the language and messaging around reproductive health, rights, and justice were considered to be polarizing and limiting. We also want to bring the issue to life. We know that when we only talk about challenges, we can turn people off. It's not to say that challenges aren't great or that the problems aren't serious, but no one wants to feel as though the problem is so large, so insurmountable that their support is pointless. We can't make people feel as though this is a crisis beyond reach. For this reason, it's important that all of our communications make an explicit connection between the work on the ground, the interventions that are having success, and the ways in which potential donors and advocates can be a part of those solutions. Share your story, building and sharing a narrative that will resonate with your audience. Sharing your story is critical to attracting the donors and advocates that you need. With that in mind, we're going to transition from discussing messaging to discussing stories. Human beings are wired for stories. This is the way that generations have imparted knowledge for centuries. We learn through storytelling, and through stories we communicate not only facts, but our values. So what is a narrative? A narrative is the story of your organization. It's the content you want to share, whether you're asking for money or speaking at a conference. In your narrative, you're always demonstrating your challenges and barriers, speaking to your audience's shared values, and including proven and effective language that connects your cause to a solution. Do highlight the impact of the work and always end with a call to action. This can seem like a lot to think about at once, and it's a great deal to fit into one story. But this toolkit will help you compose a story that includes all of these features while remaining emotional and compelling. We've now discussed both messages and narratives. Here we clearly outline the difference between the message and the narrative. A message is a short, simple idea that helps to communicate your point, and when combined with other messages, forms a narrative. A narrative is your story, a combination of several key messages tailored for the person to whom you're speaking. A narrative is the story that drives your organization's mission. When you combine messages of impact and examples with a call to action, that's when your story really comes alive. Demonstrating challenges and barriers. There are ways to demonstrate the challenges and barriers you're facing without that sky is falling rhetoric. You can do this by talking about the effective work that your organization can do and how your donors and funders can be a part of it. The example on the right shows you how you can reframe a barrier. Across the world, women are struggling to gain access to the resources and tools they need to become their own health advocates. That statement can sound overwhelming. Women across the world implies a huge number, much larger than any one organization can reach. But you can reframe that statement by talking about the success that your organization has had. Opportunities for women are opening up as organizations like ours work to educate and empower girls and women. The bottom line here is that it's okay to talk about problems, but as long as you talk about the solutions and connect them to the actions that people can take. Shared values. Values are as important as facts in terms of getting people to understand and to make change. We know that when we talk about health and family and education, that these are cross-cultural values. And values are the foundation of our beliefs and connect the heart to the head. As valuable as facts are to demonstrating impact and success, it will be values and compelling stories that galvanize people to take action. On the right, we've included a few shared values that your organization can use to be effective in framing support: knowledge, access, options, community, and families. It's far more powerful and effective to speak about women's reproductive rights and services in these contexts, rather than talking about body parts. It may be that services are really about discrete things like maternal mortality or secondary education, and that's good because those concrete things people can understand. But it's important that we're talking about those interventions and services as part of a larger value. Effective language from focus groups. We've learned from focus groups that there are certain phrases and language that seem to be very effective and resonate with women across the spectrum. Talking about the needs of every woman and how every woman has her own story to tell. We found this was an effective strategy. Reproductive rights and health are urgently different if you're a woman in Lagos or a woman in Los Angeles, perhaps, but it is still an important part of your life. Another phrase we found to be effective was this idea of the ripple effect. When we talk about women's reproductive rights and health, we're not just talking about tubes and parts. We're talking about decisions, about health and well-being that affect everything. If women cannot control their reproductive destinies and have autonomy over their bodies, it's going to be very hard for them to finish school, start a business, or raise a healthy child, to contribute to her family or her community, and to become a leader. It's important that we make these connections about what happens when a woman can achieve these things and the ripple effects they have on her and everyone around her. Self-determination is also a winning argument and frame. Communicate that women empower themselves and that your organization is there to ensure that they have the tools and resources to do so. Lastly, remember to communicate that the decisions women make around their lives and health don't exist in a vacuum. Those decisions have real implications for them, for their families, and for the community as a whole. Here we offered messaging strategies to advance and avoid. This is a very basic how-to way to think about using your messages. Avoid jargon in favor of short, relatable language. Choose optimism over fear-based language. Avoid assigning blame, rather focus on solutions. Never paint women as victims, but rather talk about how they can be empowered to make change. Talk about women as part of a larger community, not in isolation. Reinforce that culture is fluid, not fixed. Avoid talking about change as something coming in the future and not something that can happen now, and always remember to demonstrate your impact. Don't overlook success stories because you think the numbers are small. Any story you tell can exemplify that women and their families are stronger and healthier because of your organization and its impact. It doesn't have to be a great big number to be a very compelling story. Highlight your work from the solution point of view. The rationale for this is that you are putting the power in her hands. That is the message mantra that we're suggesting as the most effective way to talk about all of the good work, services, and advocacy happening around reproductive rights, health, and justice. This mantra has the double meaning of representing the empowered women who are supported by this work and the empowered women who provide that support. The core messages that come from this mantra are that every woman and girl should have the power of mind, power in hand, and power to make her path, power to change her world. You'll notice that this is drastically different from saying something along the lines of, we're meeting unmet need for contraception. This is talking about putting women in positions to exert their own power. Power of mind means providing the information and knowledge that women need to make the right decisions for her health, her family, and her future. On the right, we've included an example of how to implement this message framework. When women have access to the services that will keep her and her family healthy and strong, they have power in their hands. This is a way of advocating and messaging for the same types of interventions and services. But rather than talking about them as interventions and services, we're attaching them to a much bigger, compelling, and emotional value, the value of power. Again, on the right, we've shown how this framework can be incorporated into messages about affordable medical care and services. By giving women education, information, reproductive health, rights, and justice, we are empowering them to set their own path, to have the options and freedoms to act on her own convictions. On the right, we've included ways to talk about women making their own decisions and not being limited by the barriers around them. Framing solutions around giving women the power to change her world. Tools and training and resources empower her to make a broader impact in her community and for her community. This message was particularly compelling to audiences in portions of Africa. Again, on the right, we've included ways to talk about the ways in which this work puts women at the center of power. Describe the impact. Whenever you use these messages, you should always talk about impact. Don't just raise the issues. Talk about how donor support is making it happen. Let donors know that they're receiving a return on their investment. Tell stories that let people know how their donations and support are driving these changes. You are helping to change a woman's life. You are helping a girl get an education. These types of messages can prove very effective when communicating with donors and advocates. Impact statements connect donor support to these outcomes. These statements help to connect their support to the work of the organization. They should be aspirational and make the individual feel as though they are a part of something bigger than themselves. We've talked a lot about making the ask, but that's because it's that important. Many people are uncomfortable and don't think about the fact that their supporters are most likely receptive and expecting to be asked. So, lead with the conviction that change can happen now and position their support as part of the solution. Describe the impact and speak to transforming individual lives. Also, speak to the broader societal change and highlight the connections to issues like health, family, and education, which we know are shared values. Remember, you're not asking for yourself. You're asking on behalf of women across the world who deserve access to the resources and services that your organization can provide. Here we've included a sample narrative developed by a women's group talking about maternal mortality. Did you know that out of every 100 women giving birth, 30 never lived to hear the first cry of their baby? The result of this is 1/3 of newborns growing up without their mothers. One death is too many. 30 is unacceptable, and it has direct impact on entire families and communities on many levels. One mobile clinic would create access that would significantly reduce the rate of mothers dying by 50%. Your investment in a mobile clinic is the solution. It will help save mothers' lives and ensure that their children will have a healthy start in life, which includes an education, improved health, and a strong family. Note that the narrative is brief but emotional and very compelling. It taps into an incredibly powerful moment in a woman's life when she hears the first cry of her baby. It uses that emotional connection to speak about maternal mortality and the importance of mobile medical clinics. Try finding an emotional point like this for your organization's narrative. Remember, these messages only really work when you use them. Remember to trust the research and find the right voice for your organization that reflects its work. Get and stay on message no matter what, and have the patience to repeat yourself. Talk to your colleagues and make sure that you support one another, reminding each other to stay on message and not lose track of the larger goal, having a coordinated message for your organization. For more information about the Women's Funding Network or to download the full toolkit, visit womensfundingnetwork.org. Thank you for listening today, and don't forget to put the power in her hands.